The following program is brought to you courtesy of a grant provided by the Bank of Princeton.
Good evening, I'm Lou Goldstein and welcome to another edition of Focus On. My guest tonight is the Assemblyman from Middlesex County in the 18th District, Patrick Diegnan. And Assemblyman Diegnan is the chair of the Assembly Education Committee and he's also Deputy Speaker. Assemblyman, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
Anytime, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great. I know you're a lifelong resident of South Plainfield, and I know you've served in the Assembly for 10 years now.
Correct.
And you know, I'd like to focus in basically on a lot of your sponsorships and what you've done in the area of education. So I'm going to start right off, and talk to you, about the latest court decision, and how you think that would affect, education and the distribution of state aid, not just to the Abbotts, but to the suburban districts who are hoping for something. Well,
the Supreme Court, when the facts that were before them, anyone that understands the law could have predicted what the decision was going to be. We have a constitutional requirement in New Jersey for thorough and efficient education. The case that was before the court only applied to the 31 districts, which was, I think, a tactical error on behalf of the administration, and therefore the court was left with only being able to have jurisdiction over those 31. So really, in terms of, I'm a lawyer, so I don't want to get too technical,
right.
But in terms of process, it was a mistake. If the governor's intention was to challenge the funding formula, it should have been brought on behalf of all the districts, not just the Abbott, as they now become called the Abbott districts. I don't want to wander on, but that's really, to me, the most regrettable aspect of the decision, because Governor Corzine had developed a funding formula which was bipartisanly adopted, virtually unanimous adoption by both the Assembly and the Senate, which abolished the Abbott decision. Really, basically, the money followed the kids, and it really had a much greater positive impact on the suburban districts like East Brunswick, South Plainfield, Princeton, and now we're back to this Abbott dilemma. So it's not a good situation, but let's hope we can work through it.
Okay. I think another thing I want to talk to you about is recently Senator Ruiz introduced some legislation in the Senate regarding Teacher Effectiveness and Accountability Act. It basically covers tenure and evaluation of teachers. And I just wanted to ask you, what type of reception do you think it will get from the Assembly?
Well, I have a bill before the Assembly that will extend tenure from 3 years to 5 years. Okay. I believe 3 years is just too short a period of time, but I'm not going to mislead you. I am an advocate of tenure. And I'm going to give you real life situations, and I always say this when folks ask me why am I an advocate for tenure. You don't want someone who is influential in a township or a borough or a city to be able to go in and intimidate a teacher into not doing what's the right thing for his or her son or daughter. So I think tenure is an important aspect of teacher vibrancy, teacher performance, etc. But clearly everyone agrees, Teresa on the Senate side, me on the Assembly side, that non-performing teachers that aren't doing their job, shouldn't be in the classroom. So those are really two different issues. Tenure, in my mind, right, should be preserved, but expediting resolution of non-performing teachers is something that also should be pursued.
Okay, so I know there's a proposal basically to talk about, the effectiveness of teachers and whether they should be, granted tenure after, 2 consecutive years of not receiving an effective rating. And along with your idea of extending tenure to 5 years, which a lot of people have put forward, do you think that this is something that will be saleable, as we go into the years ahead?
Well, the debate is just starting. I mean, again, as I indicated, I personally do not favor abolishing tenure. I don't, as I understand Teresa, and she's a terrific person, by the way, as I understand Teresa's bill, I don't support it as it is presently written, but it's just the beginning of the legislative process, and very rarely does a bill get adopted in the exact format that it was introduced. So it's a starting point. Okay.
And talking about starting points, the charter legislation the charter law has been in existence in New Jersey for approximately 15 years right now.
Correct.
There's been several reforms that have been suggested. You have a bill that you introduced. And I wanted to talk to you about the local residents and residents having input into decisions prior to charters being approved by the State Department of Education. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's interesting that we're sitting here in Princeton because this is one of the townships that are really affected by the proposed legislation. There has been an outbreak of what people refer to now as boutique charter schools. Let me back up and say I do not oppose charter schools. Charter schools, especially in terms of our urban areas, are a potential solution. And you know, anything that's going to improve education, I'm in favor of. But to me, this is America, this is democracy. Charter schools should not, because it is public funding. Your Board of Education dollars, 90% of that amount goes to support charter schools. So that's very important. This is not some private, it's not a voucher bill, it's public dollars.
Right.
East Brunswick, for example, they have a Hebrew charter school. Right. It costs the residents of East Brunswick approximately $1 million a year from taxpayers' money to support that school. There is a similar proposal right now in Highland Park. There's a Mandarin charter school proposal in Princeton. The folks that I've spoken to in East Brunswick, Highland Park, and Princeton in general do not support those charter schools. So my feeling is those that want to open up the charter schools should be made to make their case to the public. If the citizens support it, then you know, all the better. If the citizens do not support it, ultimately it's public dollars, it should not be approved by the department. You know, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of ironic, and it surprises me because the governor has come out in opposition of my bill. The public votes on the Board of Education budgets. So, I mean, if you're saying that they should be able to vote on their overall budget, but not how their dollars are spent for charter schools, to me it doesn't make sense. So, and again, to me it will make the process stronger. The governor recently said, oh, that'll kill charter schools. Just the opposite. The folks that I've spoken to in Newark, Irvington, Camden, Elizabeth, they want charter schools. So it's going to be passed there, and that's where the need is the most. But in a township like East Brunswick, which has great schools, a township like Princeton, which has great schools, a township like Highland Park that has great schools, why in the world should public dollars be siphoned off to something that the citizens don't want? That's, to me, it's about it's democracy. But again, the debate on that one is just starting. And by the way, my running mate, Barbara Bruno, Senator Bruno, who we were talking about earlier, terrific person, she's sponsoring similar legislation in the Senate.
That's good. And I think your legislation, from reading, that there is some bipartisan support for it. I saw that Assemblyman Biondi from the 16th District has reached across to support the bill, and I know Senator Bateman is reviewing the bill and has indicated some initial support.
Two very good people. And Joe Malone, who's an assemblyman even though he did not support the bill on the day it was before the committee, he abstained and indicated that when it hits the floor he would support it. So there is bipartisan support.
But you don't have any idea when it might be posted? Or?
I'm hoping we can do it before we adjourn. I mean, I would like it this being early June. I don't know when it's actually going to be shown, but we're going to adjourn around the end of June. I'd like it really basically to be on the governor's desk in the summer if we can.
Well, that would be a good thing. That would be a good thing. One of the things that have some people confused, mostly school officials, is the new anti-bullying legislation. Some people have called it, great, and others have said, you know what, it's a little bit too severe. Any thoughts on that?
Again, it is a real problem. And I mean, it's the stories I hear. I recently was talking to a parent, and this is just shows I'm from another generation. Her daughter was a victim of what is called bombing. Are you familiar with this one?
No.
When we were back in school, you're younger than me, but
Civil War days, yeah.
Okay, Civil War days. If you and I had a fight in the afternoon, we went home that night. The next day we came back, we forgot what we fought about. But nowadays, with the cell phones, computers, etc., these fights continue overnight. And what is now happening is your buddies will bomb me, as it's called, all night long. They'll say, Pat's a jerk. Oh man, where did he get those sneakers? I can't believe he's got so little hair. Blah 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 blah. Well, you couldn't do that one. And by the time the next day comes, the kid is afraid to go to school. So I mean, it's the technology has made bullying so out of control. Of course, we're all familiar with the tragedy at Rutgers. Yeah. So, will the bill need work as it goes forward? Of course it will. But again, it was our intention, I was one of the sponsors of the bill, to at least give districts a tool that they can try and put a lid on this stuff. But we've gotten calls that the process is confusing, the mandates on the districts are confusing as to what they can and cannot do. Also, I've had calls from some districts where kids have had activities in other school districts, and the question is, can it now be brought over to? So clearly there's going to be some need for tightening up and clarification, but it's so real that we have to get something out there. I mean, it's really, I was just recently at a seminar where it would break your heart. The father, his son committed suicide. He was from Vermont, and the same situation. He was off on a business trip, and while he was gone, his friends started making fun of him, etc. They put up pictures of him, called him a dork. You know, hey, you know, when you're 13 years old, I have a friend who says that when you're 13, it's better not to go to school than to go to school with the wrong sneakers on. I mean, the peer pressure is so tough. So something had to be done. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, but I'm proud of what we've been able at least to start.
Okay. I know you also sponsored a bill which creates crime of victimization of persons with disabilities and senior citizens. And where is that right now?
It's still in committee.
Okay.
I have to tell you, I'm a lawyer again, as I said, the three types of crimes that if I was a judge, I'd throw the book at the person is crimes against folks with disabilities, senior citizens, especially shut-ins, etc., and children. I mean, it's just intolerable, and anything we can do to enhance the penalties and to discourage folks from doing it, I'm a big advocate for it. But right now it's tied up in committee. I know the Bar Association, and it's just like we were talking about before.
Right.
This will not shock you. I'm not all-knowing or a genius. Most of the stuff I put in needs work. So you get the process started, you put in at least the theory, and then you sit down with folks. And not to get political, if the governor's listening to this, I think that's the one Achilles heel that he has. You got to bring people more into the process. The situation that's going on right now with education. Even when people have ideas that are contrary to your ideas, sit down, talk with them. From my experience, usually compromise is a better course of action than what you started off with, because folks have different knowledge, different points of perspective than you do.
It's fair. It's fair. Another bill that I saw that you introduced prohibits a college or university from spending, public funds for commencement speakers. And was that because of the recent events at Rutgers, or?
I have to be. I am now the chair of the Education Committee. I was formerly chair of the Higher Education Committee.
Right.
I was shocked when I heard that Rutgers was paying, what was $30,000, I think?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Rutgers University, it should be an honor to come and speak before Rutgers University. I thought it was embarrassing. I mean, the bill probably will go nowhere because I think the Board of Trustees of Rutgers have gotten the message, and the other state universities have gotten the message. We have plenty of quality folks that are more than willing to come and give inspirational commencement addresses without paying folks to do it. And I was surprised to find it. That's pretty common. Did you know that? I was surprised to find it's pretty common practice.
No, it is pretty common practice at all the universities, yeah. Yeah. Well,
crazy.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing, though. Yeah. It's a good thing to limit that so that the
Not just my point of view. I mean, again,
right.
But I know, I'm not going to mention names, but I spoke to a couple of members of the Board of Trustees of Rutgers, and they weren't even aware of the fact that they were paying for it. I mean, it goes through on an agenda or bills list or whatever. It wasn't a separate vote,
right.
And they were even a little bit embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
And I think Dr. McCormick, to give him his due, he kind of stepped up to the plate and said he thinks this is the last time they're going to do it. So hopefully it is.
Okay. Is there any traction, just switching it, is there any traction for a bill to raise the age of compulsory school attendance from 16 years to 18 years?
Again, I'm sponsoring that bill. At this particular point, funding is such an issue that, raising the requirement of mandatory attendance is back and forth, but I think kids should be required to attend until they're 18. That's just my theory. But no, at this particular point, the bill is not moving forward.
Okay. Any thoughts on what we can do to stem the dropout rates in some areas?
Well, you're not going to stop the dropout rates by cutting back on support for education by $2 billion. And I say this everywhere I go. My father was a milkman. My mom was a maid. They're both Irish immigrants. I'm sitting here with you today. I pinch myself all the time. I don't know how it happened. It's some kind of... But that's a bit, the opportunity that is America is the opportunity to education. And when you start making it exclusive, hey, a friend of mine's daughter was just accepted at Georgetown, right?
Beautiful.
Jump up at, hey, $60,000 a year. He is a lawyer. She is an accountant. They're not poor folks. And she's saying to, and they have another daughter. She's saying to me straight out, Pat, where are we going to get $60,000 a year? their daughter is not eligible for any, economic grants or anything of that nature. She's a good student, but she's not getting any grants in that regard or scholarships. So when folks are given the opportunity of a lifetime and not being able to take advantage of it because of finances, that's not healthy for our society. So if there's one thing, and obviously it's close to my heart, if there's really one thing that we as a state and a nation have got to do is figure out where we're going in education. And you're talking about this is kind of circuitous route, but if you're talking about the dropout rates, you got to give kids smaller class sizes, more. So many times kids go to school, especially in our urban areas, because of the arts program or because of the sports program. What's the first thing that's being cut out? The arts, the sports. Some towns are now charging, they actually call it pay-to-play fee. I have a friend who's paying 3 times, 3 sons are in soccer, they're paying $1,000 a year. $350 a kid, actually $1,050 to play soccer. I mean, so this is, and I know it's tough economic times and every dollar counts, etc., but I think the last place you should cut is education, and sadly it seems as though that's the first place we're doing the cuts.
Any thought about the 2% budget caps that have been imposed on districts lately, whether or not we should limit elections, school board elections, especially for those districts who consistently pass budgets and they come in under the cap? Is it necessary to go back to the residents and say, please vote again, or is the 2% cap a little bit too tight for districts?
Well, first of all, I'm one of the 3 people in the legislature, on full disclosure, that voted against the cap. So, because in other states that have imposed caps, such as Massachusetts, they simultaneously increased state aid. We reduced state aid and imposed caps at the same time, and it's showing effect. I do this Read Across America, where you read a Dr. Seuss books, which, by the way, are not easy books to read, because you're asked. But every class I went to this year, no more duty aides, no more teaching assistants, class size 35, 36, 37. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you had a teacher's aide in the classroom, class size 25. If you're talking 3rd and 4th graders, talk to a teacher. That's a tough class to teach. And then when you get into the middle school age, so we as a society have got to figure out what's our priorities here. And I know it's tough times, and I know there's, but if you can come up with $400 million for this debacle in the Meadowlands, Xanadu, if you can come up for $300 million for Atlantic City, you can come up with some money for education. It's all about priorities. That's in my mind.
And do you feel in the future those priorities will shift?
I hope so. I hope so, but am I optimistic with the environment we have right now? No. I mean, but hopefully it's that shows like this, parents getting involved, people letting folks like me know that this is the #1 concern to them. East Brunswick, the #1 reason people move into East Brunswick is the schools. Always has been that way. And when those schools start not performing as well, it hurts everybody.
Well, I think it's all school districts, whether it be East Brunswick, whether it be Cherry Hill, schools in Pennsylvania. I think that all schools face the same challenges.
And we have the best, and that's what's so distressing. The governor continually talks about non-performing schools. We have the best schools in the nation. CNBC did a poll amongst those that are being required to relocate with their families. I don't know if you read the results of the poll or not.
No, I didn't see the results.
New Jersey was the #1 choice for relocation because of their schools. Isn't that interesting? And these are folks that move all over the country. Today, came out in the paper, we have the highest graduation rate of any state in the union. All these folks, the folks of my age, just snowbirds, are now moving to places like Florida and South Carolina. And when I talk to my friends when they move down there, they all say the same thing to me. Pat, great, the weather's great, property taxes are low, but you wouldn't want to send your kids to school here. And, so that's something for us to be proud of. We got great schools, and let's continue to support them.
Talking about supporting things, do you think the current voucher bill that's been proposed would hurt public education in the long run?
Absolutely.
And why?
It's taking money away. I mean, the estimate that it would take away, I think the number is $80 million. I mean, and plus, in my mind, I went to Catholic grammar school. I went to public high school, but I went to Catholic grammar school. My parents did have a lot of money. That was their choice if they wanted to send me to a religious school, but they paid for it. And you know, that's what America's all about. When our founding fathers, Ben Franklin, wanted the public education system, it was so that all of us would have a melting pot in one place, not one kid go off to a Catholic school, one kid go off to some type of elite Ivy League school. But if you choose to send your kids there, that's your business. But I don't think that our taxpayer money should be utilized for that purpose, especially when we don't have enough to go around. That's just my theory.
Right.
And I know others would give you totally different answers on that question.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, and we'll be having a show coming up on this, on women and health issues, is that a while back, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you know, yeah, I've been wrong many times, and it won't be the last time I'll be wrong. Yeah, that's okay. But I know you sponsored a bill which requires insurance coverage for MRI tests for women at high risk of breast cancer. And I hope that has gone somewhere.
No, it has not. And I'm going to give you a real, and I'll tell you what was the reason it spurred me to do that legislation. Actually, she now works in my legislative office. One of my associates, her mom took a particular drug when she was pregnant to save her from losing the baby. Turns out later on that that particular drug was shown to lead to breast cancer in the baby as they grew older. In addition to that, my secretary had all kinds of signs of, that there was something wrong there.
Right.
She went to her family doctor who said, no, it was some type of fibrosis issue. It wasn't, you know your own body. MRI was not covered by her insurance company. She paid her own money to go into Sloan Kettering, have an MRI taken, and guess what? She had breast cancer. She got, ultimately, after an awful lot of effort, she did get reimbursed for most of the cost. But if she did not have the ability, now again, I'm not saying that every person, but I'm saying if you fall into those high-risk categories, and they are defined, that you should have the right to have an MRI covered by your insurance company. I mean, it's just common sense. And in the long run, as we are all learning nowadays with preventive medicine, it doesn't cost money, it saves money, in addition to saving lives. If she had been not diagnosed and treated properly, the cost would have been extensive and she could have lost her life. So that's something I feel strongly about. But no, it is not the law.
Not yet, huh? Okay.
You know, anything now that falls into the category of mandate, everyone is shying away from. And I understand these are tough economic times, and some things we do have to put on the shelf. But I will continue to reintroduce it until, hopefully we're not going to be like this forever, and we're going to have a little bit of money, and we can start supporting these worthwhile programs.
Does those mandates include Abigail's law? Like Abigail's law,
that's the one with
requiring the newly manufactured school buses to be equipped with sensors?
That's another one that is, and it's funny because I actually got a call today that it may make it through this session.
Could you just explain that a little bit to everybody who may not know what Abigail's law is?
There was a tragedy, an absolute tragedy in my hometown of South Plainfield. Little boy, bus comes to pick him up in the morning. He runs out of the house. The little girl, cute little, break my heart because I went to the wake, cute little thing about this tall. Mom thought she was having her cereal at the kitchen table. The little boy runs onto the bus. She runs past the mom, and somehow the mom didn't notice, stands in front of the school bus, and the school bus runs her over and kills her. And the way the school buses work is they have these arms, and she was so tiny that even though the arm was extended, the safety arm, she was underneath it. This is not, Star Wars technology. I know your car may have it. My car has it. The little things, the sensors in the bumper, so that if you're close to something, all it does is beep. I spoke to Steve Califer, as a car dealer. Steve told me to install those things in newly manufactured buses would cost about $75. So is it a mandate? Yes.
Right.
But it's only on newly manufactured buses, and it's such a tragedy. I mean, the bus driver, who did not even know he had done it, they stopped the kids at the next stop. I mean, the poor guy had a breakdown. I don't know if he's still right. So, to me, is it a mandate? Yes, it is a mandate. But $75 a bus, only newly manufactured buses, it's a no-brainer.
Your love of education clearly comes through. And so I was wondering, where does that come from? I mean, family members in education, or just, you could have been chair of a lot of committees, but you chose, the education committee. I was wondering, why?
It's interesting you say that, because the way it works is when you go down to Trenton, and you're elected, I didn't know this until I got elected.
Okay.
You actually sit down with the speaker, and the speaker will say, what committees you want to be on.
Right.
And at that particular time, the speaker was Albio Series, and Albio, who's a great guy, is now a congressman, said to me, Pat, you're a lawyer, I'm going to put you on the Judiciary Committee. And I said to him, well, Albio, that's great. I said, but I'd really like to be on the Education Committee. So he actually, being nice, put me on both.
Right.
That really, love of education comes, I have to say, from my oldest sister, Maureen, who passed away. She was a teacher. She was like a second mother to me. She was literally like 17. She used to take, when she went to what was then Newark State Teachers College, Kane University, I was a little kid, she used to actually take me to class with her, I can remember it. And then my brother Joe is a teacher, and it's just something that my daughter's a teacher. It's just, to me, I referred to it before, that's the key to opportunity in the United States of America. You give everybody an opportunity for a quality education, sky's the limit.
So do you plan on staying on the Education Committee for a while?
Yes, as long as they'll have me.
As long as they'll have you.
They can throw me off at any after this show airs.
That's nothing. I think one of the things that we always like to look at is that we know what's happening right now. And so if we go into the crystal ball, we like to say loose crystal ball, let's look at what's going on in education. And if you looked into your crystal ball in the Assembly, what do you see as the future, things that are happening, down the road that you hope, if, you'd like to see develop out of the Assembly Education Committee, the Senate, and ultimately, the governor's desk?
Well, I'll talk about K through 12, and then I'll talk about higher ed. K through 12, no doubt about it, the good news aspect is that there absolutely positively is focus now on our center cities and what's right and what's wrong. And don't think that every school in our center city, by the way, is a bad one. There's good ones. So I think you're going to have a whole bunch of innovative, creative, you're familiar with the situation in Newark with the Facebook founder giving money towards Newark. So I really think, every crisis is an opportunity. I think there is going to be some exciting innovation in K through 12, especially in our urban areas. In terms of higher education, Governor Kane actually recently did a report. We have to invest in our higher education. I mean, we have really not done any capital improvements in higher ed or public universities in New Jersey in close to 10 years. That's not healthy. And also, there's much talk about organizing our public institutions in a different way. I'm a big advocate of that. For example, William Patterson College is known for its arts program. Montclair right now is simultaneously developing an arts program. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's the model that California uses. Make William Patterson your arts university.
Right.
Make Montclair your teaching or your business university. Make Rutgers, by the way, I think should absolutely positively take over our medical schools. That should be part of Rutgers University. Most great universities have that. So I think especially in your higher education, you're going to have a lot of exciting initiatives. Plus, we just now have, for the first time, a Secretary of Higher Education was just appointed, Rochelle Hendricks,
right.
who's, by the way, a very nice woman and a very terrific background. I think will do an outstanding job. So I think, especially in the area of higher ed, you're going to see a lot of exciting stuff coming down the road very shortly.
It's great. It's great. Well, we're running out of time, tonight, but I just want to thank you from, just came up from the State House and dropped by, and it was great exchanging ideas on this. Wish you well. Hope everything goes good, and thank you for stopping in.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And thank you for watching. This is Lou Goldstein. We'll see you next week on Focus On. Have a good evening.
This program was brought to you through a grant provided by the Bank of Princeton.